"Give the house to my wife," my son yelled. I smiled quietly, turned, and slipped into my room before dawn broke. The evening had been strangely still. The cold winter wind shook the old window panes of the home I'd spent 45 years building with my own hands. Each brick held a memory. Every corner echoed with my late wife's laughter. I had dreamed of spending my remaining days surrounded by these ghosts. But that night changed everything. We sat in the living room, myself, Daniel, and his wife Claire. The fire crackled softly, filling the room with warmth. Then Daniel leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Dad, I think it's time you transferred ownership to Claire." I blinked, stunned. "What did you say?" "You heard me," he said, voice rising. "You're old. You don't need such a big house. Claire and I can put it to better use." My hands trembled, not with fear, but rage barely held in check. "This house isn't just bricks and mortar, Daniel," I said slowly. "It's where your mother and I built our lives. Where you took your first steps." Claire sneered. "And now it's where we can raise our kids. Don't be selfish." The word stung like a slap. I'd worked 2 jobs for decades to keep a roof over us. Skipped meals so Daniel could eat. Wore the same worn coat for 15 years so he'd have the newest school supplies. And now I was told to hand it all over as if my life had an expiration date. I didn't argue. I excused myself, went to my room, and closed the door quietly. My heart pounded, but my mind was steady. I pulled out an old wooden box from beneath the bed. Inside was the deed to the house, some savings bonds, and my passport. Before dawn, while frost still clung to the garden fence, I left. No note, no words, just silence. 3 days later, Daniel called, frantic. "Dad, what have you done?" "I sold it," I said calmly. "You what?" "The house is gone. Someone else owns it now." There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "You can't do that." "I can," I replied, "because it was mine." What Daniel didn't know was the buyer was an old friend, Patrick, who wanted to renovate the property. We agreed I could stay with him rent-free while I figured things out. Years earlier, after my wife died, I quietly invested part of our savings in a small coastal cafe run by a trusted young couple. The business thrived. My share grew. I reinvested in small ventures, a fishing charter, a bakery, a local art gallery. Nothing flashy, just steady. Now, with the house sold, I had enough to live comfortably and to decide who would inherit what someday. Spoiler, Claire wouldn't get a thing. A week later, I sat at a seaside table outside that cafe, the waves crashing, gulls circling, salt filling the air. I savored my coffee, enjoying the peace. Then a voice behind me. "Dad." I turned to see Daniel, thinner, paler, drained. Claire was nowhere to be seen. "She's gone," he said flatly. "Left when she found out the house wasn't ours." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought she loved you." His eyes flickered with shame. "She loved the house." He sat down, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't realize what it meant to you." I thought. "No, Daniel," I interrupted. "You didn't think. You listened to greed instead of your heart." He looked down, fiddling with a sugar packet. "I'm sorry, Dad." I didn't reply. I let silence speak. Finally, I leaned forward. "A home isn't a trophy. It's a trust. And trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild." He nodded, hands shaking. "I don't expect forgiveness now, but can I visit? Maybe we can talk." I studied him. He wasn't the same man who shouted at me. There was humility now, a crack in his pride. Maybe life was teaching him what I'd learned long ago. Possessions mean nothing if you lose those who care. That night, I walked along the shoreline, cold sand crunching beneath my boots. The stars were sharp. The moon painted a silver path across the sea. I thought of my wife. She'd say stand your ground, but leave a small door open for Daniel's return. So I decided, no money, no property, but my time, if he earned it. If not, everything I own would go to charities building homes for families who truly need them. Months later, Daniel visited often. At first, we talked about nothing: weather, fishing, the cafe's blueberry pie. Then he began to open up. He found a modest apartment, a new job, and volunteered on weekends. I didn't know if it would last, but I saw a spark. The boy I'd once carried on my shoulders, the boy who wanted to be like his dad. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel said, "I don't care if you never give me a cent. I just want to earn your respect." I said nothing. I placed a hand on his shoulder and watched the sea. Some things don't need words. One thing I knew for sure: no regrets. Walking away from that house wasn't the end. It was my freedom's beginning. And maybe, just maybe, Daniel's redemption too.